Welcome to the 1-year anniversary of Virtual Fridays, the Dire Literary Series. I'm your host, Timothy Gager. And we have some of our open mic all-stars and some new people, which is totally awesome. So I'm really glad that people came out. There's nothing like having an anniversary open mic when it's just me here. Because, you know, I had an open mic for myself the other day, and I didn't invite anyone. I didn't even announce it. And then I was all like, you know, sad that no one showed up. So anyway, we're going to start the open mic with Mr. Jon Wesick.
Thank you, Tim. Got two poems for you to start with. I wrote this trying to process an infuriating encounter I had with the healthcare system this week. It's called On the Day of My Canceled Surgery. A lump just under my skin snowballed into 12 doctor visits, costing me $3,000. After a wait that felt like a year on death row, I sit in a hospital gown, my face flushed, head nearly bursting, needle in a vein on the back of my hand. The blood pressure cuff exposes all the broken glass that is my heart. Decades of fear, rejection, and resentment. The paper shredder that chopped my career into confetti. How medicine failed me after work crippled my hands. And the internet porn that refused me a ride home from surgery no matter how I begged. The surgeon's solution to today's frustration, even more doctor visits. Can't bluff my way through anymore. What should I do with the shards of my heart? Forge them to vases that break like before, nuke them to iron in the core of a star, grind them to sand so no edges remain, toss them in oceans that wash them to sea glass. They'll pass for gems when seen from afar. And I talked about the paper shredder. I spent the last month of my work at a place that I worked at for 12 years, shredding everything I'd done because we lost our government contract. So this is the Intelligence 8655 paper shredder. Features a 21-gallon waste bin in all metal construction with an intake speed of 17 feet per minute and sheet capacity of 6. The 8655 can turn an engineering firm's documents into confetti in just days. I feed estimates, test reports, schedules, and painstaking calculations into the 16.5-inch input. The 0.87 horsepower motor tears decades of long nights lost on desperate caffeine-fueled deadlines into 1 by 5 millimeter cross-cut shred. The shredder jams on a boyhood dream. I open the waste bin, find it stuffed when I change the garbage bag. Education, effort, and could have been spill on the carpet. This is where our sacrifices all end up. 12 garbage bags hauled to the basement, tossed in the trash. Thank you.
Thank you, Jon. Now your question. You probably have set a record for going to the most Zoom open mics of anyone in the entire world. You usually go at least 6 or 7. Without naming names, what was the strangest thing that has happened or the strangest setup of any of these open mics?
Well, you know, there's one in New Zealand that's actually kind of neat. And what the host would have you do is if you read a poem, then you'll stick around and say the best line of the poem of the poet that follows you, and then the host will literally stitch them all together into like a cento afterwards. So
awesome.
No, that wasn't weird, but it was nice.
Well, thank you, Jon, and thanks for being here nearly every week. It is awesome.
It's an awesome reading, Tim.
Next up, we're going to have Lauren, and why don't you just take it? I can't tell what your last name. If you'd like to introduce yourself by your last name, that is fine.
Sure. So I'm Lauren WB Vermette. So greetings, everyone. I just have two to share with you. Vaccinate this. You arrogant jackass disciple of Adam, how dare you reach between my ribs to pluck an apple from my left breast, then hand me a syringe filled with my mother's milk, nourishment I never had. We just couldn't get it together, she told me, while I watched her breastfeed my sister, who I could never touch, who she held as my father revved his motorcycle, then left. I grabbed the syringe, jab it into the apple, as though an injection could cure me of her spittle flecking my cheeks, her sobs wetting my lap, all before my toes could brush the floor. As though one small prick could heal decades of wounds seeping beneath the bandage of my skin, each one self-inflicted. Compassion is a virus. I must train my cells to love, I say. Stop giving a fuck, you tell me, as the plunger hits home. Thank you. And the second one is called The Heart Charmer, after Thomas Lux. All hail the heart charmer, hair woven with thistle, bearing baskets of clover. Let us pay homage to the scalloped edge of the heart charmer's immaculate collar, the crepe de chine sheen of the heart charmer's crow's eye black dress. The heart charmer lies in wait in the black and yellow spiral of a garter snake coiled in the palm of a father's hand, who holds it out for his young daughter to touch, to show her how to step into her fear like pulling on her favorite ballet slippers. The heart charmer guides her finger to lightly stroke its scales, though the heart charmer has no need for men or children or pets. The heart charmer speaks the universal language of birds, bees, mountaintops, trees, soap bubbles, explosions of milkweed down. When the flamenco dancer stamps her heels, that is the heart charmer playing the drums in an avant-garde goth rock band named Quoth the Raven. When the sun declines to send down its rays, the heart charmer is a day lamp. The heart charmer fills the crushed chest cavity of a dead rat plowed under winter snow, then spring thawed into a bird's nest bristling with twigs. The robin fledglings dive bombing your head in your screen house is the heart charmer, flicking your nose to get your attention, to remind you to inhale, exhale, to take just one fearless breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Here's your question. Both those two pieces had distinctly different tones. Do you write when you're in those moments, or do you conjure up those emotions in order to write?
Ooh, I'm very prompt driven, and it's kind of what comes out of me as within the prompt. So.
Great. Good answer. I do that too. And I do everything, and I do all of them. Next up, we have Mr. Doc Janning. Who's, I'm going to say, how you doing, Doc?
I got you. Oh, I'm here.
I'm glad
as opposed to being there.
What do you got for us tonight?
This poem has an epigraph from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Death, the undiscovered country. Instead of it being an undiscovered country, I call it an undiscovered world. All of time exists in but a single moment. And in that moment, in the distances of forever, contains all the love and infinite longing of life for itself. expressed as the circle of life. It sings the lost language of everywhere and every when, amid kaleidoscope dreams of an undiscovered world and an ancient future in a present past. And in its love and its longing, mourns for those who were, with ache and angst of loss, tears flowing, softly falling, in new monk. This poem was written for the South Euclid Tree Commission. It's going to be read in public at an Arbor Day ceremony, along with another poem that I'm writing. And
well, thank you, Doc.
one more.
Yes.
Dreaming in the shadow of forever, dreaming through all the eons of before today, beyond tomorrow, dreaming in a syzygy of past, present, and future, dreaming in the echoing mists of time, dreaming among all the stars of everywhere and every when, dreaming of becoming, being, dreaming amid music and poetry of worlds of never, dreams of love, dreams of home.
Thank you, Doc. And here's your question. I know that being named a poet laureate, you're asked to read at various functions. What was the, you can answer this also not even as a poet laureate. What was the strangest location or strangest non-poetic location that you were asked to read at?
I would have to say at the intersection of two main streets of our city, which is essentially our city's downtown. It was for a tree lighting ceremony around Christmas time.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Doc. Next up, Mr. Jon Stickney.
Hey, thanks, Tim. And thank you for doing this for a year and for allowing us to visit you on Friday night and to meet all these wonderful poets and to hear all these wonderful poets. And it really has brought a little bit of light into a very dark time. I really appreciate it. I really do. You guys were talking about being prompt driven. I've been doing the 30 in 30 Facebook page for 30 poems for 30 days. In April. So the poems this prompt was ambient light. Ambient light, would not ever be light. It was an all surrounding tour of wave and particle. But he found at night, especially after the fall, just Adam and Eve, they and their bodies, that sparking, that glowing after, was not enough to show the glory of the world between sunset and rise. Ambient light, not nearly enough. It was all there was until that fit of pique over the side of applesauce for that night's dinner. Can you believe this crap? God said, and lightning was born. This is a prompt called The Box of Spiders. Spiders' silk is 5 times stronger than steel. A box of spiders. What gift will bind our love most securely? I have just the thing, the clerk said. Do you gift wrap? He asked. And then photographic memory. There's no way of knowing. There's no way of knowing. My supervisor had a photographic memory. It helped him survive law school, sites and cases right there on a printed page to be recalled and recorded word by word on every test. I was never that blessed. My memory was a trick bag at best. Members of obscure rock bands, their instruments and names, no problem. The capital of certain states, the batting averages of slightly above average Cleveland Indian ball players, random selections of verse, 25 lines of the prologue of Canterbury Tales in badly mangled Middle English, Juan that April in the Shora Sota, a Willie Shakes sonnet and soliloquy, how to spell soliloquy. Nothing harmful, nothing really useful. Over time, my memory has become merely photogenic. When I search my data banks for an answer, there's usually a smiling figure, hands up in a gestured shrug, or a good-natured guy winking. The cartoon balloon caption above him reads, "Guess you're a dumbass." At least it's not a 404 error message page. I'll take good-natured over blank stare any day, even today, whatever the date, day of the week or year it may be. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Here's your question. Since you've been coming to Diary, you've pretty much bought or read all the features books, and you do read a lot. Is there a connection with what you're currently reading or at any given time and what you produce as a writer and a poet?
When I write prose, there's usually a connection to what I'm reading. My prose tends to be crime stories, noirish crime stories. And I tend to read a lot of that stuff, both classic and modern. In fact, Rusty Barnes, I wrote a little bit for his online publication. And I know you know Rusty, Tim. And I was kind of hoping Rusty was going to show up tonight. And poetry-wise, I fall back on people that I began reading when I began reading poetry. It's Charles Simic, it's Russell Edson, it's guys like that, James Tate. And I think the humor part is something I've always had in my poetry.
Thank you, John. Some good names there. So next up, Barbara, are you interested in reading for us?
Yes, I will. Congratulations, Tim, and thank you for creating this wonderful place where I look forward to coming every Friday, even though I don't write poetry. I love listening. I love coming here, and it's been great. So thank you for that. This is just really short. I had to find something that kind of resembled poetry, but okay, it doesn't have a title, but oh, let me take these off. We're intertwined on the ride, the high of the peaks, the dips and the turns, never once an even pace or a straight line, intense or gentle, high or low, fast or stopped. Suddenly it ends. You let me out. Don't let me go. I need the rush. I live for the thrill. Each ride made me want more. It was our carnival, yours and mine. I thought we were alone. You never told me. This ride was meant for any girl or any boy. You fooled me on one ride after another. The tunnel of love, the house of mirrors, the freak show. Now, like a used up ticket, stepped on and dirty, worthless and spent, I stand and watch the next silly person who believes in carnival dreams.
Thank you, Barbara. Now I've got a question for you. Well, first you got to do the pre-question. The pre-interview is that an older poem like you told me about?
Yeah, it's like from 2006 or something.
Okay, now I know that you're working on a memoir, and it's a very, very intense memoir. And after reading this poem, do you think you'll ever go back to poetry?
Maybe, maybe not. I would love to. All my writing is kind of dark because of the subject matter, and I would love to find a way to express other things. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you coming every week, and that's your first time at the Open, so that's awesome.
I know.
Next up is my friend from the North Shore, Kevin McCarthy.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Tim. Thank you for having this. I like a party. This is a poem that's been sent out and sent out and sent out. And so I do read it a lot, not that much, but I know you've read it, Tim, because you complimented me on it. It's Woodstock. It's over, Johnny. DC departure, 50 borrowed dollars in pocket, Ford Bronco steed full of women and me and Kentucky boy named Vert, short for Vertner. Friday, flash out of town, stop, New York City, rich girl's house. Long Island, am I in England? Drink, smoke, stone, smoky stone. Mom makes breakfast for silent weirdos. Daughter loses it. Can you at least say thank you? I did say, but people didn't hear. I didn't even eat. Budweiser, please. That got a look. Out of here. Big city, big city, big city, big city. Rubbing my elbows. Boom, bam. Country onslaught of cars snaking at us. Turn around, they yell. Roads are closed. Giddy up. Keep bucking, Bronco, 4 wheels begging for turf. Hang on to your hats, baba, bucking, bam, like a dream. I'm in a bubble. Trees, leafy fingers caress window glass, speed whacking through fields and yards. Oops. A yell, a holler, and I'm on an upstate carpet ride. Then dirt roads, hippies, wandering cow town. What's happening is happening here. Mister says, oh shit, what's the use? Park here next to the porch. I walk in, Woodstock, through gate ruins. Thumper, I'll meet you there. And there he is, tailgate sitting, smoking. We enter the bowl of 10 million people who like them and me, and who are like them and me and us. The girls look for familiar, for DC crowd, probably have a tent, huh? Me, Thumper, Vert, dive in, mid-bowl, muddy plastic seat music. Who the fuck is Shauna Na? Country Joe, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Acid drop, sun goes in, cold, trusty jacket. Pass out in it, no freeze to death jacket. Thumper, let me wear it a while. Okay, give it back. We fight, acid is sparking, we fighting, people booing. I get jacket and acid is on. Our plot is a town, bedroom, store, school, movie, spaceship. Am I dead? Indoors, outdoors, eerie, moon, I walk it, huh, wow. Good morning, people, says Grace, and I come in for a landing on Jefferson Airplanes piloting. Beep, 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 stall, chirp, landed, applause. For me, no. Sun is up. Sunday morning, need a drink, don't even dream, puff, puff. Do I still eat? There's no food, man. I walk into a field of corn. Each ear is jasmine, cake, water, slice of sky, candy, cotton, blood, aqua, air bites, peanuts, popcorn, pussy, night. Come on, baby, one more time. Going home, going home. Note to self, get white clogs. Chipmunk says, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years after. Music, music, music. Whoa, Jimmy, Hendrix, me and Thumper, top of bowl. Look at Jimmy. Remember, touch forehead, click, stick out thumbs. VW bus, color of mud. Side door wide open. Where to, bros? DC, man. Hey, we going to Silver Spring, Maryland. Ha, ha, ha. We ride in silence and joints. I'm so thirsty I could drink a fucking building. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I've got a question for you, Kevin. First of all, did you go to Woodstock? And if you did, how long was that afterward did you write or start that poem? And if you did not, how did you research that?
I did go. That was 1969. And then in about 2013, I was on a paint job, which is what I do. And it was I guess I didn't do the math, but it came out to it was the 25th anniversary of Woodstock, I think. And I was in a room, in a house, drop cloths and paint and ladders and all of that. And I said, it's the writers group tonight, and I don't have anything to read in Salem. And I knelt down, I had a notebook, and I wrote that poem in 8 minutes, and I've never changed a word of it.
Fantastic.
And what was the other part?
Oh, no, you.
What was the other? Oh, that's good.
So you used to drop acid, now you drop cloth.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Kevin. Next up, one of our regulars as well. And thank you for your support each week, Linda Wlodyka.
Hello. I'm very happy that I met you in the fall of, I believe it's probably 2019, and on the Mohawk Trail. So that's how I found out, or that's how we got connected somehow. So I'm going to start out with one. It's about different times of day, and it's a bird poem. And they're like little haikus or tankas. I'm not exactly sure. They're just short little poems. They actually have pictures with them, but I can't do that right now. So it's called Identified Flying Objects. Dawn. Treetop croon. Mockingbird displays practiced chords. Concerto soon. Audience sways. Noon. Woodpecker tap. Rotted trunk. Beaks labor long. Insects mishap amidst the punk. Dusk. Unspoken sunset. Amenable bats. Swoop overhead. Sonar nets. Impregnated gnats. Night. Horned owl alights. Forest hooter. Peers into darkness. Sets his sights. Midnight suitor. So that's that little short bird poem. And then I have one that I dedicated to a mom who had her baby. And the name of it is In Her Hand, for Christine. Soft as a feather, white like downy snow, with a pearlescent hue, she carries her heart's desire through a meadow of lavender, dreamy with fragrance. A fine mist falls gingerly upon her shoulders, like velvety, supple flower petals caressing her skin. Her hand waves, her mouth smiles. Her infant child, restless for sleep. His mother's heart holds more love than any rain cistern could collect in 1,000 years. Held in her hand, his tiny palm, even an ink spot cannot blemish. The baby whimpers tenderly. His mother pats his back, rocking him to sleep to a lullaby. the one his father sings as he strums a guitar in the dim shadow cast by the crescent moon. So those are the two I read for this round.
Well, thank you, Linda. So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So, you know, your work is something that I look forward to each week, but we've talked about you putting out a book. So without putting you on the spot, what do you think prevents writers from putting together a manuscript and putting their work out there?
You know, the biggest thing for me, and I just have to, maybe I got to talk to people who've already published books. I mean, I have 3 chapbooks, but they're self-published and they were from a long time ago. I guess I get overwhelmed with which one of these 150 to 200 poems should I put in there if I'm only going to have 30 to 60 poems. And I know what I liked writing and what I think came out good, but how do I know the general audience wants to hear what I like? How do you narrow that down?
I'm the one asking the questions, so.
I get overwhelmed again, you know, it kind of like.
A quick response is, if that's what's holding you up, have someone that you trust and is willing to look at your poems and put them together in some way.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a mentor. I don't want to seem that insecure, but I think I do.
Well, I mean, insecurity and writing is certainly go hand in hand. Very,
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Linda.
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry, sometimes I'm too quick with the mute and don't have any bad intentions with that. All right, let's move on to Jeffrey and pronounce.
Yeah.
Valjen?
Close. I've heard so much worse. It's Varlin. The J is silent.
It couldn't get much worse than the way I just did it.
You should have been in elementary school with me, and then you'd hear all the mispronunciations. But yeah. So this is my first time, and so it's really nice to see and meet everybody. Forgive this possibly ignorant question. I mean, like I could definitely read some poems. I usually prefer stories, as you probably guessed. So I don't know what's more appropriate. I could read like 3 minutes of a story and then just leave it as a giant cliffhanger, or whichever. I don't know what you prefer.
What I prefer, whatever you feel comfortable doing, is what I prefer. They both work. So just because we've heard a lot of poems tonight, this is not a strict poetry venue. So do whatever you want. It's great.
Good to know. If anybody's interested in this, just let me. I mean, no pressure. I'll read I'm going to set a timer for myself, and I'll read 3 minutes, and then I'll be quiet. And then if you want the rest of it, let me know. All right. This is a story I've been working on. It's called Corpus. Corpus. All right. I got to the party about an hour after it started. Most of my friends had already arrived, and it felt like I was stepping into a dance routine on the wrong count. Everyone was on a 4, and I stumbled in on a 1. Still, they waved with their big, pale palms and welcomed me with incoherent shouts of welcome and deliverance. I walked more like a broodmare than a prodigal son, but at least I was accepted again in my hometown. Derek Motes came over to me and said something about he was glad to see me. He was yelling, so I turned my head away, letting him belt it into my ear while he threw his arms around me. He was already drunk and heavy, so I had to brace myself in the doorframe. "Hey man," I said to him, "I'm here." He pushed his fat finger into my chest. "You're here all right," he said, as I carried his arm like a yoke into the living room. Derek got loud as he told everyone to look who was here and how someone needed to get me a beer. "Sure," I told him. I waved sheepishly at everyone and put both my arms up to wave like I was being mugged, my head lowered and deferential. My face signaled I had mixed feelings about being there at the party. I think Reggie could tell, but he still seemed happy to see me. "Glad you made it," he said to me. "Oh, sure, man. Thanks," I stuttered before someone thrusted a beer into my hand. I cracked it open and put it to my lips. "It's been a while," Reggie said. I said something like, "Yes, I know, being a father really changes things. Not getting out as much as I once did." Reggie smiled as he said, "Oh, you got that right. That's part of it." "Sure," I replied. "It sure is good to see everyone, though." My wife never liked when I saw my old friends, especially at parties. They drink too much and you make bad choices, she always said to me. She had something similar that night to say when I was getting dressed to go. We had just put the baby down and we had agreed earlier I could stop by the party for a while. It's for Reggie's birthday, I told her. He's one of my oldest friends. She told me Reggie aged like milk outside. She asked me why they would never grow up and why I felt like I just had to see them. There was no answer I could give that made it better in her eyes, so I just promised that I wouldn't drink too much. They aren't good people, she said to me as I closed the bedroom door. I know, I said, and I whispered it again to myself once the door was shut. I reminisced with Stephen Hauser about the time we climbed up on the elementary school at night and how we used to put bags of garbage in the road so that cars would hit them when whipping around a busy corner. We laughed like teenagers again, bringing up our oldest inside jokes and trying our best to remember everything. There were no new memories. He brought up the time we chased each other in our cars through the old neighborhood with paintball guns, shooting wildly out the window at each other while attempting to stay on the road. Soon a few others came and joined in, sharing memories of times we had in our formative years. Derek came back around and remembered the time they got me to smoke pot and how I ate an entire family-sized bag of Ruffles. They laughed like hyenas, and I sat on the couch wide-eyed and smothered by a tangle of drunken, familiar bodies that I knew like the feel of an old, well-worn sweatshirt. They piled on top of me in shifts, leaning over me like I was a pharaoh and they were feeding me grapes. I couldn't stop from indulging, chewing each succulent bite like it was the last sweet connection I had to myself before now. This lasted for what seemed like hours. It felt like I had just returned home after being in prison for a decade. Friends would come over and sit on the couch, sometimes handing me a beer, and would add to the tapestry of memories that we were weaving together. I was a corpse in front of the church at a funeral. Everyone in my village came back to pay their respects. They poured perfume at my feet and adorned my neck with their finest jewels. It's like they knew I'd be going home soon. It's roughly half.
Thank you, Jeff. Now, I had the pleasure of publishing one of Jeff's stories in the last Wilderness House Literary Review, so you can check that out there. So let me ask you a question not related to any of this.
Sure.
You're a Spanish teacher in a middle school. Do any of your
That's right.
students know that you write, have read your writing, or any of your coworkers know that you write or read your writing?
A few coworkers. I actually, in addition to being a Spanish teacher, I used my homeroom class, which is not Spanish related, just a homeroom random collection of students. I handpicked them along with some English teachers to start our school's very first literary magazine this year. So yes, I whenever I finish a story, I usually just go read this or don't. I don't care. Like I throw it to them just so they can get comfortable sharing their writing. Because a lot of them 7th, 8th graders here in Virginia at middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th, they're not always comfortable putting themselves out there. So they know I write, but I've actually had the privilege to kind of do sort of some what you do. And you know, my group in the school at large sends me stories, and I put them in a cheaply scrapped together Google Doc and put, you know, students submit visual artwork for covers and stuff, and I format it all up with like a table of contents, and I send it out to them. So that's been cool to do for the kids. So
well, way to go. That's really awesome. So it sounds very enjoyable and rewarding.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for showing up, Jeff. Next up is someone that's shown up a lot more than Jeff, believe you me. Amy Probst.
Well, I don't think we need to brag. All right. Well, and thank you, Tim, because this is like, you know, been like from a lot of us, but I didn't find you until pandemic. So this has been a wonderful silver lining and sanity string through this whole last year for me. So love it. That said, I'm going to read some really weird things tonight. I have 3 short pieces. They're unrelated. And I will start with Meat Baby. Meat Baby screamed, but we didn't hear him. Stevie always ate Meat Baby's mouth first, ripped it off before we'd even said grace, because the lips burned crispy chewy and Stevie was a spoiled brat. Mother sliced Meat Baby, serving me an arm, even though I hate feeling fingers around my tongue. I'm sick of Meat Baby, I said with raw lips. I pushed against the arms of my chair, trying to stand. Meat Baby flinched when father's shoe smacked my face, and I held small broasted fingers as I fell back. You'll eat what mother makes, father sobbed, tucking a napkin around Meat Baby's chin and smiling bravely at Stevie. Okay, at least that's over. Next one is sweaty. Going home is never the problem. It's staying home where I fail. An unwillingness, Agnes would say, or inability, I would say, to withstand buckling realities that crust my eyes. Down the hall, people are screaming, and I do not wonder whether they need help or whether they are injured, only whether the screaming will stop. A handful of children roll past me, and my nostrils itch with old aquarium and fruit fly scents. The children are so precious. I come to understand why old ladies like to fondle and squeeze and squish their cheeks and talk about eating them right up. You're still here, Agnes whispers into my neck. That's true. My eyes find a broken infant under the credenza. Agnes kisses my bloody tears and says she's made veal parmigiana for supper. It's the only dish we'll both eat. Forkfuls of cow baby coddle like mum, and I force myself to ignore flakes of future falling to my plate. Chewing is the easy part because I don't even have to think about it, like making babies. Hey, Sweaty, maybe you should take that parka off, Agnes says. She looks in my crusting, dripping vision. I wipe my eyes with my scarf and scoot away from the table. The hockey stick in my hand jumps forward and lands in the moonlight mouth of Agnes. Her bloody dentures land in the milk, kind of like a cookie, but not really. It brings children from the woodwork, deformed, howling, treat-deprived blind spots. No fruit roll-ups, the one with pigtails says. Blame Sweaty, Agnes says, lurching forward too late to save her bloody cookie teeth from the fat one. I finally start to nod off. Okay, last one is better. Escape velocity. Over the shiver and through the shoulds, we keep on course for the unknown, dodging judgments that nick our ears, status quo licking our heels. We look at each other and laugh, terrified. We feel everything at this speed, at this experiential event horizon, atoms against our skin, platelet highways, the terror of joy. That's all.
Thanks, Amy. I am dying to ask this question. Is Meat Baby based on a baby?
No, I think Meat Baby started out as an idea of like a meatloaf shaped like a baby and just sort of took off from there. Like, you know, you see on Facebook, sometimes people make those gross like meatloaf feet or something. I think that's how it started. I don't really know.
That's awesome. So, and I also love the fact that you always say anatomy is something weird, something strange, but it's always good. So thanks very much, Amy.
Thank you.
Next up is Cyndie Zikmund.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw Holly was going next, but I'll go.
You know what? I messed up. Why don't you go and then we'll go right to Holly.
You okay, Holly?
Yeah.
So this isn't a poem, so I feel I'm starting off apologizing because it's not a poem, it's a flash essay. It's a personal, I guess, nonfiction. And I picked this time to read it because it was just published in Pink Panther magazine. And they publish two publications a year. And this one came out on International Women's Day. And I had it all set up here. And of course, now I gotta find it again. And the title is Dragons Live Forever. I built an altar in my spare bedroom's closet to honor objects I cherish. They're not valuable, but precious for their connection to a journey taken long ago. Years before, I listened to the leader of an all-women's mountaineering expedition in the back of a North Face outlet. Her book, Annapurna, A Woman's Place, is the kind of book that seeps into your body, takes over your thoughts, creates a yearning. The book challenges the prevailing attitude that a woman's place is in the home. As the author talked about the perils of hiking an avalanche-ridden trail, her hard-earned success touched me in a way that another silent understanding gives you strength. In 1986, I was the first female hardware design engineer at 3Com, a Silicon Valley networking company. I had finally earned a place in the male-dominated profession, and it felt like I had climbed a mountain. Each page of Annapurna speaks of the physical and mental challenges 13 women overcame on one of the world's highest mountain peaks. I wanted to experience the Himalayas firsthand, but not by climbing to the top. That was dangerous. I bought a Trekking in Nepal guidebook, learned to boil it, peel it, or forget it vegetables, and pack light. On a mountain temple near Kathmandu, monkeys collided on rooftops while sandalwood incense wafted through the crisp fall air, filling my nostrils with a calming aroma. A Tibetan man with high cheekbones and sparkling eyes smiled. I hadn't heard of Tibet until I bought an antique Buddha from the young man. The serene statue appeared as though it had no memory of the perils faced crossing the Himalayas to escape extinction by the Chinese. I could fit the statue in the palm of my hand, wrap my cold fingers around it, gently rub the contours of its robe. It may not have been right to own an heirloom from a culture in jeopardy, but I didn't think about that. I only thought what a fine companion this Buddha would make. On my altar, next to the small Buddha, rests my father's folding coin purse. When I turned 5, I worked in his television shop, sorting coins from his yellow cigar box. After watching Walter Cronkite, he listened to my prayers and tucked me in. When he died, I was 8, an age that doesn't understand the finality of death or grief or the genesis of endless sadness. I found his folding coin purse containing his unspent change in the front pocket of his pants. I didn't consider that objects last longer than people, or that decades later I would make an altar for it to rest. I only knew that clutching it reminded me of the hours we had spent sorting the day's proceeds. After returning from Nepal, I volunteered for the Tibetan Resettlement Project and helped 3 refugees emigrate to the United States. It wasn't out of altruism, but a desire to fill my emptiness by helping others in need. One 40-year-old woman, Angmo, was a carpet maker. She wove wool into auspicious symbols like dragons, lotus flowers, and snow leopards, talismans that protect the soul against intruders. Each passing of Angmo's deft hands across the loom transferred a design from her mind's eye onto the beckoning strands. Sometimes a lock of her hair tumbled down to be captured in the design for eternity. Angmo made me a carpet with a dragon design, which now guards the door to my altar. Angmo attended Tibetan gatherings where long white scarves were blessed and then placed around each person's shoulders like a stole. When it came time for her to move, she gave me one of her sacred scarves, symbolizing our connection to each other and to the greater Tibetan community. My mother's picture and the ring she wore every day rests in the folds of the white scarf, fluffed to look like a cloud. The Montana agate has fallen out and the ring setting is empty like a dead head on a spent rose. When my mother died, I was a sophomore in high school. We were not close in the way that some girls tell their mothers about boys and such, but we were bonded by our love of the Rockies. We hiked for hours, lost in thought, chewing on wild mint and fiddling with snake's grass. Her departure brought me unrest, like the tumbleweeds that had rolled across the main street in Harlow, Montana. I watched them from the picture window of my dad's TV shop, feeling sorry for the solitary bushes forced to detach from their roots too soon. My altar contains memories of my wandering journey. It grounds me when I feel uncertain and reminds me that the future has always been uncertain, and yet things worked out. When dark winds threaten a grief storm, these sacred objects remind me of the brightness that I would never have known had my path been clearer. It's only having gone through darkness that I know the full effect of brightness. Searching for peace, I've been to the rooftop of the world, finding hope in a stranger's smile, experiencing empathy in paying a favor, and joy in receiving a gift. My altar reminds me that I once was a child with a father and mother, that a woman's place is where she wants it to be, and that extended families can soften a loss. My altar, it reminds me who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that your question? First of all, is that the actual rug behind you as your background that you mentioned in the essay? All right.
Yeah, I think it's not here. It's actually on the floor, but it's like a 3x5.
Are you lying on your back then?
No, I just put the background on and I took, yeah, I am. Just so you can read upside down.
What's the thread count on that rug?
It's not a high, it's so weird because I'm looking back here to see what it is, but it's not a high-end rug. It's not.
All right. And so quick question. So, you don't have to go too in depth with it. As a nonfiction essayist and from your experience and what you write about, is there anything what do you consider out of bounds?
Oh, I think I've been thinking about that a lot. When you make someone else, I mean, it's okay. In my case and in my stories, I try to make it about me and not about the other person. And I don't try to diagnose them. I try to stick with what they did to me or what happened, but not project onto them what I think about them and try to be as fair. I take my cues. If you read Chanel Miller's book, Know My Name, I think she was the student that got raped at Stanford. And I think she does a really good job of that. I mean, and she has boundaries and, like for instance, I had a friend who has a very interesting life and I started writing about her life and I thought, I can't do that. That's not right. I mean, I'm talking about her, what she went through and how interesting she is. And I just stopped. So I try to keep it about me, which seems very narcissistic, which is hard,
Well, thank you very much. I mean, all I got to say to that is, write what's true to you. And, writing such is not necessarily narcissistic. You're being kind. So that's always good. Next up is Holly Jaffe. We'll get you in order right now.
I have two. I didn't have a title for this one, but I think I'm going to name it Bible Belt Blues. Now let me turn my fan on. When I'm at my most vulnerable, my brain releases the jackal. And no matter where I take it, hey friend, let's take a stroll along the beaches of Miami, or grab a good book and lay beneath the poplar trees. And it's during these bleak days when God is disappearing that the most harmonious of folks begin turning up like ladybugs on the backs of my hands. There seems to be one in every unhappy place, every waiting room, every all-night grocery, every lonely stretch of sidewalk. They feed me Bible verses like spoons of applesauce. Accept Jesus into your heart, you only need to ask, they say. But the truth is, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. But I play along because now I've fallen in crazy love with the vulnerability of my wrists. And what's the worst that could happen? He refuses by placing a crow on the tree branch that brushes against my bedroom window. I believe in the promises and the eventual reckoning of your DNA. I believe in an equal number of good and bad days, give or take. And these are my suffering days, and these too will pass. I will once again look at a sunrise. I will once again embrace the sunrises and the sunsets and believe that I deserve this beauty that has been created for the blessed, created for the believers. I also believe that one day I will no longer be an earthly being, and I believe you will read this again and say to yourselves, now I see the poetry. This is called The Brown Recluse, and it was inspired by, I was supposed to give human qualities to an insect or an animal that most people are frightened of. The brown recluse winced as he unpinned himself from the evil queen's red cloak, thankful to be free of her poached breath, her endless rants, and the stale breadcrumbs that fell from her chapped lips and scratched all 6 corneas. He traveled a spider's mile along the spiral banister, pausing only once to refresh his many legs. He thought maybe Princess Madeline's wardrobe would be a quiet place to mend. So the brown recluse nestled himself within the velvety folds of Madeline's smallish stack of blankets. Intoxicated by the scent of cedar and thyme, he closed all but one eye and fell asleep. His intentions were completely misunderstood, as if he were there waiting in her closet like the last line of a sonnet, a rather cruel twist to an otherwise winsome story. For Jesus answered all Princess Madeline's tiny prayers. May all my dolls be pretty and silent, and forgive me for feeding Tulip my French beans. When Madeline spotted the spider climbing across her church shoes, she shrieked. The cook, the chambermaid, the queen, Tulip, and the gardener ran up to find her hammering the floor of her closet with a riding boot, breaking toys and sending dust balls flying. Hold on, sorry. The brown recluse twirled away and up between the musty pages of a book of nursery rhymes and had nightmares after reading stories of a baby falling from a tree, a little boy who broke his crown, a sly wolf, and finally the story of little Miss Muffet, which hurt his tiny heart. Madeline prayed on her knees for God to banish the spider from her sweep forevermore, but she knew he remained somewhere in the dark, waiting and waiting for what else did he have to do. She thought he's a monster, small, but still a monster with a fiddle on his back, like a skull and bones. He must fulfill his destiny like the serpent who tempted Eve or the black cat that suddenly crosses your path on a perfectly good day. The brown recluse, he vowed that next morning he would never be remembered as the spider who terrorized a princess. And so that very night, when Madeline had finally cried herself to sleep, the brown recluse made his way to the foot of her bed. He drew in his legs as he appeared more like a scrap of brown paper and waited patiently by her pink satin slippers. That morning, Madeline scooped him up into a hanky and tossed him out the window, and she would live happily ever after. And the brown recluse would live to see another day times 6, until Tulip would catch him out of the corner of her eye, napping between haystacks, and begin to swat at him like dogs will do, and continued swatting until the spider was no longer.
Thank you, Holly. All right, so you said that last piece was based on a prompt. So for you, how do you can you naturally write from prompts, or is it a struggle for you?
I think I'm pretty good with prompts. Sometimes initially I'm afraid of them, but yeah, I think I do enjoy them, and it just sort of places me somewhere where I don't know. Yeah, I'm comfortable with them. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the second piece there. That was awesome.
Thank
you. I see. This is a skill. If I can mute someone right in the middle of thank and you, it's kind of awesome. So the next up. This is in the 1-year anniversary party. I told people it was a potluck. I didn't see anyone bring anything. So you make sure you know you're eating. There you go. I see Barbara's got something. Yeah, we got some drinks. Awesome. Next up, Kate Cuminsky.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Thank you so much, Tim, for doing this. I mean, it's just amazing. I have 3 poems. Can you guys hear me? Everybody hear me? All right. Let's see. I have a book coming out, and it's kind of, I mean, the manuscript's like a year old, right? And I'm just about to get the galleys, and I'm having to go through an uncomfortable period of like self-promotion. And one of the things I've been doing, since you're talking about prompts, is kind of listening to what the reviewers and the readers are saying about my writing. And I realized I really write about Florida a lot. And I'm a real Florida poet. And I love Florida. I love and hate Florida like most Floridians, you know. And so I decided to do some deliberate writing about Florida now, you know, because there's that lag of time. Those poems are old. You may hear Charlie the dog scratching at the door. He loves poetry. But this first poem is not one of the Florida poems, but the other 2 are more recent, more deliberate. And just no title yet for this one. This is a poem of support to daughters who stay. A curtsy of solidarity against not the choices, but contempt of ones who moved away. The chores ignored vacation days, balloons sagging off kitchen chairs, welcome home banners blowing away. This is for the ones who shop and sweep, clear, excuse me, leftovers, and stray toys left by out-of-state grandchildren. This is for sons who turn the phone off while their mothers rest up. Make sure appointments are made and kept. This is for people who don't even think of college or careers elsewhere. Stay as close as possible just because they understand the gift life is. Thank you, never enough. A verse for ones who know every visitor at the hospital and who owns the Pyrex from the funeral banana pudding. Which church lady brought a ham? A poem for you, friends everywhere who care and stay and care, no matter how many days, years, no matter the angry tears of brothers and sisters steeped in ambition. Jealousy sometimes wears a sneering glare, a contemptuous stare. Never mind that. These next two are a couple of the more deliberate Florida poems. Just a small reference in the first one. Dishes. Suspect of the machine, the caustic chemical smell of pressed blue speckled cakes of soap. I love washing dishes the old-fashioned way. I don't believe in hot dry, but drip dry. Am satisfied by the soldierly rack of fiesta ware, plates, then saucers, then bowls, cups on top, pots and pans last, a gleaming stainless tower angled just so. It's not as though I miss typing poems or don't know how to use computers, cell phones. Although once in a while, I think about the decisive thwack of, say, stack. All left hand except for the graceful second finger K, snick, 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 snick. And how pretty the way metal embosses a page. Not yet 60, I'm officially old. Missing things you'd have to explain to anyone of childbearing age. How efficient we seem, the old ones, after hurricanes. Serene, unafraid of owl, winging bat, of water rushing through the aquifer, invisible 100 feet below. And this last one is a total, I have been focusing a lot on, just through the pandemic, obsessively rereading writers I love. It's just comforting. And I'm really crazy about John D. McDonald, who is the author of the Travis McGee series. It's a Florida group. And he's very lyrical, so I blatantly have been making some poems ripping off his language. So it's a totally found poem called The Green Ripper. And there's an epigraph by Jimmy Buffett. Travis McGee's still in Cedar Key. That's what old John McDonald says. The Green Ripper. In Iran, a little band of school teachers dribble gasoline around the movie house and light it, incinerating 430 people, mostly children. In Guyana, 900 Americans kill themselves. The pot is beginning to simmer. Little bubbles appear around the edges. Intrigue, interconnected, multiplies geometrically, helped by the computer society. Orbiting eyes in the sky scan us. Poisons abound. Sick birds fall out of the air. Here we are in happy land. A resort town, bright sunshine, bright boats, humid young ladies, a stage setting, carnival, scenario. The world is out there. A final agony of millions, new millions arriving every week. It is all a thing, a great plated toad lizard thing with rotten breath squatting back inside the mouth of the cave, infinitely patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. So in terms of promoting a new book, really quickly, what's the title of the book and when is it coming out?
Okay, it's with Finishing Line Press. And it's the women who gave up their vowels. And I need to say that because a lot of people think I say vows, like wedding vows. The women who gave up their vowels. And it comes out June 11th. It's in pre-order until next week. And then it'll be available after that. So
Great. We look forward to it. And Finish in Line is a great press, so check it out. Next up, Craig Frederick, husband of Anne.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hail But Bulbs, 1997. Written while the bulbs in the mud, starting with the first snowdrops of the new year, and lasting through the dying tulips, met the brilliant comet. Snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils, tall tulips in turn meet comet. Now, I sometimes tell people that I started writing poetry when my dad died, but the truth is it was when this comet came. Luckily, they came at the same time, so both stories are correct. This is kind of like my first poem, if you don't count writing extra lyrics to My Funny Valentine for Anne. Snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils, tall tulips in turn greet comet. Snowball falls, whip snapped round the sun, northeast sunrise, northwest sunset. Earth on, skies clear, surprise, clouds close, wind wet. Petals peak, sneak open, grin much, life in mud such as we forget. Thank you very much.
All right, you want to field a quick question? You mentioned lyrics and Funny Valentine, and that is
Elvis Costello did one version, but this let's.
What is the instrument behind you? Is that a cello or?
It's a bass. It's down off its peg, so it's not as high. Actually, Ian plays bass. Ian's in Queens. He made me a grandfather last year, and now we got news he's having a second one, and this September, another granddaughter. I'm gonna have two granddaughters.
Congratulations.
I moved into his bedroom because it's quiet and my wife's around, and so I moved the computer in here. So I'm in Ian's room. I don't know how legally required to keep a bedroom because he's been gone for 10 years now, almost 11 years. He's down in New York, but so anyway, that's why I'm in Ian's room, and his bass is still there. And he also has a bass guitar in the closet. And so he's all set for when he comes back.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
See you soon. Next up, Jackie Dawes.
Okay, so I don't have any poetry.
You don't have to.
And I'm just gonna, I think this is about 5 minutes, and I think you've heard it before, so. But it's the easiest thing I got to have fast, so. Be brave, he said, so here goes. The end of 2001. I did marry for love. I mean, I was 5 months pregnant, but I was also in love. Getting married, knocked up in Vegas, certainly was not part of my life plan, but being married at all was never part of the plan. I had figured out I was pregnant 3 months earlier, driving on the 110 freeway. I was the only car driving on the freeway because it was September 11th, 2001, and my boss had insisted that I return the car no matter what. I had thought that figuring it out this way somehow made the event special, so I had better keep it. Because I had managed to not need to have an abortion this far into my life, I worried that maybe it wasn't easy for my body to get pregnant. So yes, I should definitely have it, I thought, as I drove into the lot of the Echo Park CVS. Gerald, the house-challenged man that greeted me each time I ventured down to the store, also thought it was a grand event. He cheered, "You go, girl," seeing the EPT box through my plastic bag. I took that as a good sign, too. Of course, just the week before, he had tried to get me to go into the men's restroom with him at the Lucy laundromat on Sunset, but still, he meant well. And so it was in December of 2001 in the little chapel of flowers that I was married to my infamous skateboard photographer boyfriend. 50 of our closest friends attended, and except for his best friend randomly inviting some 14-year-old hooker with braces to our reception and my own best friends duking it out in the hotel lobby, it was a fine affair. Some terribly cool and well-known skateboard people attended, people whose clothes or shoes you or your teenagers probably have on now, but that's not so important just yet. 2 weeks later, we learned the baby was dying. She had something called cystic hygroma. I needed to check myself into the hospital to deliver her body as soon as possible. But the specialist at Cedars failed to properly communicate with my doctors at Good Samaritan, and so the 4-hour ordeal that I had been promised turned into a 36-hour nightmare. I will also save that for another time. Just know that I don't recommend natural childbirth in any way. Those women who try to sell you on its virtues are full of beans. Go for the medicine and stay in the hospital as long as you can. It is especially rotten to go through natural childbirth when several women in the other delivery rooms happen to be in the same pain for religious purposes, but all quiet down with the subsequent sounds of a baby's cry. This happened all night long. I accidentally had to endure natural childbirth because my baby that had only had 6 months time to grow had developed into a baby that was full-term size due to her condition. By the time the hospital had figured it out and was preparing to give me an epidural, the baby decided to deliver herself. The nurses frantically left to wake the doctor, who came into my room disheveled and shocked. I indeed was dilated 10 centimeters, and the baby was not just going to slide out as they had planned. The doctor had the anesthesiologist back off because it was simply too late. I had been screaming in pain for over an hour, telling the nurses that something was wrong, but no one would listen. Apparently complaining about pain during this process was common, and since my baby was not full term, they had initially thought I was exaggerating. The doctor got serious, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Jackie, you can do this." Her conviction was such that I laid back into the position and tried to follow her quick instructions. I would have done anything to make the pain stop. So then, after 34 hours of sickness and intense pain, and just one quick moment, there was complete relief. And to my shame, I smiled up at the doctor. Oh, that smile. If I could just take it back. I could get past the horrible redheaded nurse, the violent diarrhea, the vomit, and other mortifying physical responses I had to the Pitocin, the chopstick with the long needle at the end of it that they stuck up my vagina because my water wouldn't break, the enormous flood of gushing red water that eventually and unexpectedly poured out of me and spread across the floor of the hospital room as I stood crying in front of my new husband, the room change that they had me do in the middle of the night because my baby was taking too long to die, the walk down the long hallway with my entire backside exposed to the world and me too traumatized to stop it from happening. I could forget that same horrible redheaded nurse coming back for her second shift, sending me to the bathroom, saying my pain was probably a bowel movement, when in fact it was my child emerging from my vagina. I could forgive her horrified face when she realized this and left me in the bathroom to run and get the doctor. I could even get past how long it took them to believe that I really did need the epidural, but I can never forgive my smile. My face of gratitude met the doctor's, and it created a snapshot in my brain. Her face had been satisfied with the result of helping me through the birth, so we were both caught smiling. And then there we both were, stuck with the reality of what was facing us, laying between my legs. So we had this one happy moment, followed with her odd, regretful look. I come back to it a lot when I remember that day, the fucking smile. The doctor went back to work. I passed out in shame or exhaustion. Either way, I woke up a few hours later and my husband was sitting at the foot of my bed. He was packed up and ready to go. What happened? You passed out again. I had done that the day before after they stuck me with the chopstick needle thing. Oh. The nurse came in and told me that my baby was in the other room waiting and that I could go in and spend as much time as needed. For a second, I thought maybe the baby had made it, but then it all registered. I understood. Strangely enough, moving my body after all that trauma was easy. Let's go, I motioned him to head to the room next door. I'm not gonna see it. I don't wanna see that. I was too overwhelmed to explain to him that this, his abandonment and word choice, would be one of our defining moments. So on my own, I walked down to the door with the raindrop picture taped to it to say my goodbye. I spent 15 minutes apologizing to her, sobbing and wishing I had done better. Then we drove home.
Wow. Thank you, Jackie. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm familiar with some of your book because Jackie, Barbara, and I are in a writing group together. So, Jackie, do you find it easier or harder to write the more difficult stuff versus writing the mundane stuff within your pacing of the book?
Since I have no mundane stuff. So I think that each time I reach a new piece that's a huge part of conflict like this, I stop and then something will happen and I can write those pieces. So yeah, it's harder obviously to write those. It's the more mundane fun stuff, you can come up with funny pieces. Yeah. So yeah, of course.
What's the average amount of time you need to recharge before you move on to the next one?
I think being in the writing group has actually propelled me and forced it out of me at a rate that I've never had before. That was 2001 when that event happened. I sat down to write a completely different story about another event in my life, and that piece came out. So I guess, what was that, 20 years ago? I hope it doesn't take 20 years for each hard piece, but I do think that, I don't know, but being in a writer's group, it's been pouring out of me. I got 80 pages now, so I don't know.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. Probably difficult, but it was wonderful, wonderful writing. Next up, he's one of my favorite poets, the Bagel Bard, and reading at the Boston Public Library National Poetry Month Festival, Mr. Tomas O'Leary.
Thanks, Tim. I just unmuted myself. Was I supposed to do that?
No, you're supposed to wait for me to ask you to do that 6 times. Like that's.
We hear each other though, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been great to hear all these readings in all their variety. I'll read a couple poems. This one is called The Mugger and the Saint. The mugger was professionally filthy. He lay in wait along a lonely road that wriggled through the dark at Satan's whim. With crusted fists, he rubbed his eyes and chewed his haywire whiskers till they bled. Who'd have thought there'd be blood in whiskers, he said to no one but himself. For sure, 'tis an omen. Nor was he wrong. For along now came a saint with a bouncy little step, a neat circle of light round his head, revealing where to shift his footfalls to avoid a fractured femur or bunged toe. The saint, of course, was humming holy tunes when the mugger's vile face rose before his and said with a trite snarl, "Stand and deliver." Dear brother, forgive me. I am poor beyond your means, the saint at once confessed without a tremor, for he had no lick of fear vis-a-vis the grim brigand. The saint was clean because he'd bathed that year in the abbot's personal cistern, which earned him his penance of pilgrimage miles he was cheerfully afoot on. Art thou Lazarus? He queried the rotting mugger. Art thou, mocked the mugger. I will have your sandals, your fat brown robe, and by Christ, you'll hand me over that bright light on your head. That light is my halo, you ignorant ass. I'm a saint out walking in his robe and sandals. Desist. The mugger fell to his knees and begged forgiveness. The saint commanded him to bathe in dust. That's a saint for you. This other one harks back numerous decades to an undergraduate experience of a professor who had a really weird aura. Anyhow, it's called The Sage of Darkness. Never toy with the deep gloom, the Sage of Darkness cautions, nor for that matter swallow whole the vagaries of the soul. In our 1 semester course, you'll forfeit mind for better ways to calibrate your innermost collusions with your outermost. My gig's to guide you past the turning screw of Weltschmerz, now concentrating on your heads to make you think it really hurts. You're the elect among the seekers of the seats you fill before me. Thousands applied, but only 500 made the cut. Congratulations. We're going dark now. Kill the lights, assistant. Down we go to a place so deep, you'll earn 3 credits even as you sleep. Session by session, your tortured mind relaxes as I vacuum it into the pouches of my starry cape. The only course you really need to take. Okay, that's done.
Thank you, Tomas. Now, I got a question for you. You're probably, I've heard you read so many times and I've never heard you read the same thing. So how many poems do you think you've written in your lifetime, rough estimate?
I don't know, maybe 5,000 or 10. I don't know. I honestly don't know, Tim.
So what's the difference between poems that you've written in the past year versus the poems that you used to write?
Oh God. I could answer that with another poem I wrote last night. Should I?
No, I think we're kind of running out of.
I think so too. Yeah. Okay. The difference. There is a definitely a progression of some sort. I don't know it's toward the good or the bad, you know, but definitely there constantly are changes. They're sometimes subtle and sometimes gross, you know. I tried to write a poem about the January riot, and I did write one, but you know, I'm not sure what to make of it. So I don't know. As you know, it's changing all the time, and you either accept what you write or, you know, put it aside. So I have more poems put aside than I have in, you know, to to deal with. So I know you do too.
Well, thank you so much for coming by and to help us celebrate. And it's really good to see you. Next up, from New Hampshire, and he's a fine poet and a friend of mine, Matt Jasper.
Hi, I have no memory, so I may have read one of these before. I'll start writing down stuff I've already read. The first one is a prose poem in honor of somebody mentioning Russell Ledson earlier, and it's called Yellow Line. David D, 33, of Manchester, eats with his face in his plate and screams Manchester, eats with his face in his plate and screams for his face in his plate for no apparent reason. Police charged him with disorderly conduct for pounding nails into the yellow line on a busy city street. He is often arrested for misdemeanor crimes associated with his mental illness and problems with his face and his plate. At least 2 psychiatrists and a psychologist have examined David for no apparent reason, often screams for his face and his plate, pounds nails into himself and others, is dangerous to the yellow line. And then here's a non-prose poem called Draft. There issued blood and smoke from a hole in my side. There issued fire from chimneys. There issued soldiers into the street to surround what, they asked, draining hip flasks of spirits gathered from skyward gaping mouths. Their victims' last breaths exhaled only to be captured again and imbibed so the bleary sky could cease to divide the world into patterns and factions, subtracting themselves endlessly by perhaps playfully switching sides to mow down comrades during a firefight, or jumping onto a live grenade to save a nice transistor radio that played and played its song until the hillside twinkled with the lit cigarette tips and gleaming eyes of those who appreciated the noble sacrifice of the nameless private and drifted off to sleep, not guessing that when the last eye of a scene closes, everything it holds up falls to the ground. Tents, trees, clouds, a biplane, mess kits, moon. I salute my lieutenant, then chloroform a spy. I dismantle the spy and congratulate a bomb. It goes off and I'm hit, then wrapped in tourniquets, ripped from what was left of the villagers' clothing. Ah, the joys of absorbing ordnance, ignoring orders to advance upon a fortified position, exchanging fire for some water to put it out with in an abandoned house. If only the tripwire weren't hitched to a crooked seascape someone will come to fix. Let it pour on the floor, I'd implore, if only to spare my men from cleaning up the mess. Tourniquets release their grips upon swaddled wounds. Stacks of severed limbs roll down a hillside, interrupting the marriage of a plow to land it just happens to be passing through. If only the last eye knew that not looking would make it all come undone, that mere forgetfulness allows blood to pour again and again. Perhaps it would beg forgiveness, summon the power, to circumvent againness, knowing that if only we had known, it would have made no difference.
Thank you, Matt. And I always find your voice very strong yet unique. So among those thoughts, I'm not going to ask who has influenced your work, but who do you think your work is similar to? I love when I stump.
Yeah, wow, I think you've stumped
Thomas.
me.
That's 2 in a row.
I've been trying to make friends with other writers who are plagued with, you know, with being a little spectrumy. My whole family has sort of Asperger's and mild autism running through it, and so I've just sort of personally found a few people who I just find likenesses to in our various obsessions and obsessiveness. And when I write prose poems, I really hope that I am like Russell Edson, who I love and who years and years ago I published a tiny little matchbook with little matches in it, and it looked just like a matchbook, and little pages came out of it. And it just started a correspondence that was, you know, really funny and enjoyable. And so that would be my fantasy comparison.
Well,
so.
That's a good answer. Thanks very much, Matt.
Thanks.
So I believe that the only person that did not read on this list was Susan. Susan, did you want to read tonight, or are you just here to listen?
Yeah, I have 2 poems.
All right.
Yeah. I came to wish you a happy anniversary, and congratulations. I just wanted to say today was a 10 of perfect days. It was just beyond perfect. And I actually want to read 2 anniversary poems because they happened in April. The first is about my daughter, who was adopted from China, and she had a pretty miserable life, and she couldn't walk. And so this is called Running Child. This is about her running. Obviously she can run now. It's called Running Child. This is about when she was 3 years old. Look at that child running behind the stone church, small legs lifting up and down like wobbly pistons, nylon pants billowed, slapping together. How like the lush white peony with red-pink center. From the tightly furled bud, petals relax as if by invisible command. No, like the wild soul flying beyond fresh carved markers. Cemetery workers clear away cut lilies and look, the wild strawberry, the shaking, luminous, pale flower. Fresh souls touch down on flagstones rimmed with new shoots, whorls of red pink in the center. Look at that. And this is a poem, you've heard this poem, Tim, but in fact, I took a hike in April, literally the anniversary, in Muir Woods. And this is called Stellar's J, which is one, Muir Woods is where the redwoods are, outside of San Francisco. So this was 2 years ago, I took the hike, and it's called Stellar's J, which is a bird. On the way up Hillside Trail, which was obviously a hill and also slightly wet, of course I worried that I'd slip, not least because these things occur quite naturally, and more because I worry that I'll die. And I have never said no worries, because there are. Is there another word for time? How it is all slipping away? But then I thought of photos that I'd seen of steam escaping manhole covers, the sideways gaze of train commuters staring down their end of days, their faces drawn, their raveled lives, their grim and empty waiting rooms. And I wished to take a photograph that caught the steam of human chi, the drive to board that train alone, to find an airsat's leather seat and watch the houses rushing by, those slumping porches by the tracks, How many times did they wake up inside the night to hear a cellar rushing by? Then woke again to hear a symphony of warblers overhead, like mezzos in a drunken choir, now hushed as I walked by. But now the redwoods broke above the sky while sorrels edged the floor and giant ferns spread out like tails. I closed my eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Quick question for you.
Okay.
So the question is, both of your poems are very nature, and you'd mentioned that today was a perfect 10, and I assume that weather-wise it was a 10. Tell me, which season do you find it easier to write during?
I have no idea. I really don't. But I will say that I always joke that there are only 10 days of the year that I can bear, and otherwise it's too hot or too cold. And so today was just, you're from Long Island, I'm from Long Island, and I grew up on the water. And so just I can listen, and it's fresh and clean and the water is sparkling. I mean, it's just, it doesn't get any better than that. So, but in terms of writing, I can't write from prompts. I just write when I need to. Something says it must be written. That's all. So I have no idea when. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Susan. You're from Long Island. I'm from Long Island too. Long Island. We'll have coffee together one day. All right. I'd like to finish the night off by doing what I've been doing all year. I've been reading from Joe the Salamander, and Lord, we're somewhere in the middle of this novel, but all I have to say is this is a part of the novel that I introduce a main character, and I use a technique. And what's going on during this scene is Joe is I guess he's 2 or 3 now, and he's being evaluated, and his mother Millie has been sort of either in denial about Joe's stuff, or just wants to have everyone treat him normally as everybody else, which is good. But she's finally agreed to an evaluation. And on the trip to the hospital is Laura, and Laura was the nurse that delivered Joe, has become a family friend, but her controlling boyfriend has made her switch to a psychiatric nurse. Millie was enjoying her conversation with Laura, which had as little dead air as the conversations her loving parents used to have. In fact, without calling each other L and M, the dialogue could have been coming from the mouths of R and S. Laura was telling her about a patient she was working with that had legally changed his name from Lindsay Nelson to Shades Creek. He preferred to be called Mr. Shady, a name which did him no favors within the community from a safety point of view, especially since he was scrawny and disheveled looking. Often Shaves was referred to as that dirty hippie. And I just lost my spot on the computer. Hang on a second. There we are. Within his hometown community instead. Shades also never shared with anyone that he needed to be medicated until he had various episodes and was sectioned to various hospitals. Everything in his life seemed to work against him, Laura had concluded. Shades had moved away from a wooded area of Alabama where, according to his story, they had a salamander festival every year. The psychiatric professionals in Alabama thought that he was obsessed with the festival and with the salamanders in general, which triggered his mania around the time of the big event. Shades told Laura that he was tired of all the hospitalizations and the harassments in Alabama, so he moved far away here to Phoenix and bought a costume shop in the downtown area. The shop, Barney's Costumes, did well around Halloween, but was fairly dormant the rest of the year. Shades Creek yearned to do something bigger than retail. Combined with his love of salamanders and ditching his meds for the first time since his move west, he came up with a brilliant idea, an annual salamander festival in the Phoenix area. His first step was to research the lovely critters who resided in Arizona. What Shades discovered there was a certain breed of salamander found in the mountain regions of Arizona known as the barred tiger salamander, Ambystoma mavoritium. They were dark, covered in yellow spots, and they grew to over 1 foot in length. They were also nocturnal creatures, so Shades decided that they were illegal to purchase. If they were illegal to purchase, he would camp out and capture a few on his own. Shades stayed up for weeks straight hunting them and continued this practice until his home was packed with barred tiger salamanders. Some of the overflow was brought into his shop where the police thought there might be illegal trading going on. When they came to investigate, they found Shades, who introduced himself as Mr. Shady, naked from the waist up, his chest painted dark brown and black with spots of muddy yellow coloring. The responding officer proclaimed Shades good for admission to the Good Sam, and that's where Laura met him. So what's he gonna do once he's stable? His clinical team has encouraged him to start the festival. Huh? Yes, Laura said. They think a constructive outcome for his troubling obsession will be greatly therapeutic for him and create a positive outcome for him and the community. Then he wouldn't feel harassed. Oh, I see. That's a good plan, Millie noted. They also suggested he no longer call himself Mr. Shady. Using Shades Creek is much safer. So that's mostly background, but thanks. And that's how also I introduced salamanders to Joe, the infant, because the book is called Joe the Salamander. So thanks everyone for coming tonight. You made the anniversary really special. The readings tonight were amazing. They really were. And next week we'll have a feature again. It's Sandra Simmons. And I also want to give a shout out to my friend Rachel Carr, who I see on the screen. That Rachel, when Dire Literary Series was a live event from 2001 to 2018, Rachel was a frequent person at the live event. So it's good to see her. So that's all. Thanks again, everybody. And, feel free to unmute and chat. Unmute.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
thanks, Barbara.
Yes, it was really fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks for
Thanks,
your
everybody.
Yeah, thank
Awesome.
you so much.
Awesome
Hey,
night.
Tucky.
Hi there.
Night.
Tucky.
I liked your Woodstock poem. It was great.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
I heard so many good things.
Thanks, everybody, for the readings. Bye.